So, what differentiates your organization from another? Maybe your benefits look different. Maybe the way that you grow your internal talent, your internal mobility looks different from other organizations. So, it's telling your story in a way that's authentic, but that's different. We all don't want to repeat the same story. We all don't want to sing the same alphabet. Maybe you want to jazz it up a bit so that people know, hey, there's something different about that organization.
Hello, this is Kathleen, and we're doing another wonderful episode based on the behind the scenes questions that we have asked our guests. Rachel, joining me again. How are you doing today?
I am so happy to be here. And I'm also equally happy that we are pulling back the curtains and letting people see what we do behind the scenes and getting that good information that they may not have heard before.
So, what we've done is we ask each one of our cleared recruiters, what is your most difficult recruiting challenge? And what are the skills or programs you use to overcome it? And the reason we came up with this is because so many recruiters believe that they are the only ones having a specific challenge. And we really wanted to give back to the community and say, we're all experiencing the same things. Let's make sure that we're sharing best practices. And what's very fascinating about this is I'm going to give you a little secret here. Not everyone used a tool. It was more of a strategy, a way of thinking things. So I really think these best practices are great to share because we're not really sharing tools, we're sharing the way we think of things. And one of the challenges that comes up a lot is getting the name of the company out or getting the reputation out, getting known. There are so many companies in this space that it's really a challenge. Sometimes when you think of a name, you're not even quite sure, is that company a government contractor? So, Rachel, what are some of the things that you've experienced and heard about from the challenges our guests have shared?
No, you're spot on. It was a commonality that you heard across many, and I think the important where there is many recruiters, you're not alone, friends, in really making sure that candidates, when they're going and doing that job search, they know about all of the companies and know about, most importantly, the company in which you're recruiting for. So it's how do you get out there when there's so many big names that may exist in this space? There's some large companies, some mid-size, but even the smaller companies, all of us want to get our names out there and be known for the things that are important to candidates so that they're choosing us, because it is a competition and we all want that amazing talent. So it really is important that we're putting our best foot forward and that people, when they're doing their searches, they go and look for that name. And so in a world of so much competition and so much noise, it's how in the heck do you get your name out there? And so I think that's really what, I don't know, Kathleen, we could spend the bulk of our time really chatting about, or just how do you do it?
Well, and taking it just a little bit further is what are some of the essences of what a job seeker is concerned about? They're concerned about their security. They're concerned about, if they go and work for a particular company, are they going to maintain their job? Because, you'll hear or you'll believe that a smaller or a mid-sized company has had a layoff or that they've had a reduction in force or they didn't win a contract award. All job seekers are looking for is a place where they're going to fit in, a place where they're going to thrive, a place where they're definitely going to get their paycheck. And it's amazing that a lot of people tend to think that the smaller to mid-sized companies are the ones that they're going to face those challenges with, when in actuality, it's across the board. It's even some of the bigger companies. It's some of the companies that are well known in the industry. They'll have a reduction in force. They'll sometimes not win a contract award. So it's how do you build that brand? How do you build that employer brand that people will then be looking at you and say, I want to apply there? So, what do you think it is, Rachel? Is it trust? Is it shiny logos? Is it good tchotchkes? I mean, what is it?
Well, all of those are great and are important, especially if you're at those on-site hiring events. I mean, we all love to shop and we all love to come home with all of the really cool gadgets and swag at all of those. But I think it goes deeper than that. Those are really the nice to haves, but it's the must haves about getting your name out there so that you can get that recognition. And really simply, it's about building that trust with that talent pool. It's putting that best foot forward. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you tell your story differently? At the end of the day, every organization has a role that they're hiring for. The roles are all different. They're doing different things, but we're all looking for great talent. And so, what's important, especially to job seekers, kind of like you mentioned, Kathleen, it's a place they can thrive, a place that they can call home. And so, for them, they really want to know what is in it for them. So, what differentiates your organization from another? Maybe your benefits look different. Maybe the way that you grow your internal talent, your internal mobility looks different from other organizations. So it's telling your story in a way that's authentic, but that's different. We all don't want to repeat the same story. We all don't want to sing the same alphabet. Maybe you want to jazz it up a bit so that people know, hey, there's something different about that organization. Maybe you don't have your name plastered across the stadium, but you can still have that same recognition by doing things maybe a little bit differently and being proud of the way that you do things and the way that you get things done. So let's dive into maybe some other ways that we can tackle those more strategically. The first one of those is really just it's about building that brand and that reputation. So we talked about the importance of telling your story, but we can kind of quantify that in brand or reputation of the company. So let's start with the job seeker first. I know this is for you recruiters, but who our customer is are the candidates. So let's think about those job seekers. When they're going out there and looking for that career, friends, they're out there researching you. Yes, some may call it stalking. I call it informed consumer, but they are going out there and really researching the organization to determine is this a place they want to be? And so there was a study done on thrivemyway.com where it said 86% of our candidates are evaluating the company's brand before they're ever considering applying. It's important that you have a good story and a good brand out there. It's just like anything else. If you're going out there to sell a cake, you want to make sure that the icing covers the entire cake. You don't want to leave half of it off, unless you're only going to charge me 50%. But really, you want that cake to look pristine. You want it to look great. And you want people to know, hey, this is a red velvet and this is why you should buy this cake. So I think it's important that you're really out there and that your brand is relevant, it's present, and then it reflects truly who you are. LinkedIn did a study, and this one just shook me to my core, but 75% of job seekers, they're again out there researching that reputation out there. But what was really kind of mind blowing to me is that by getting this out there, by having the right brand and the right reputation present to job seekers, it reduces your hiring efforts by 50% because you're not having to worry about that constant attrition. So do it right on the front end, and that way you're not having to pay on the back end.
Being in marketing for most of my life, I can always tell you word of mouth is the number one way that people are going to find out about your company. I remember I went to an in-person event 10, 15 years ago, and there was a transitioning veteran. And he had done 4 tours. He had all of the credentials he needed. And he and I were just walking through the event. And I said, "Why aren't you talking to that company?" And he says, "No, I know the way they treat their veterans. The word of
Mm,
mouth was that they were really bad." And I was shocked because this was a
wow.
company that had an enormous advertising budget, had an enormous presence everywhere. But it's that word of mouth, it's the way you treat people. And we heard this definitely with some of our guests on our podcast that the brand recognition is really all about that first impression that you make with a candidate. And let's really think about that. That first impression sometimes is with your career site, it is with your application, it's with your ATS. And oh my gosh, really? The way someone first interacts with you is your ATS? Ugh. So this is why
Right.
I was so excited when we were talking to Jess Mathias over at Coreforce that they really, as a recruiting team, focus on the personal touch and the transparency. And she said that she thought that the hardest part of competition was how do you stand out? And so they have really made a commitment to add the personal touch to their entire hiring process. Jess and her team pick up the phone every time someone applies for a job. And not only every time that they apply for a job, but at every stage of their hiring process. She really thought that it was important to touch base with the candidates, touch base and get feedback on how the candidates were thinking about the overall process. And I thought it was also very powerful that Jess from Coreforce said that they give feedback to the candidates as why they didn't get the job. And this is something that brings up a lot of consternation in our industry because people will say, I can't do that. You humanize the entire process so much more by giving some constructive feedback. Yes, I know the HR experts are going to sit there and want to shut me up, but I'm sorry. We have to have more engagement, more conversations with our candidates as to why they didn't get the job. And I thought it was very strategic and very smart of Coreforce to be able to say, we make sure that we give feedback to our candidates, that they didn't have this right skill set or they didn't have this certification. The candidates would then go and make sure that they worked on that. And lo and behold, they were willing to go back and apply for another job at Coreforce, and the candidates got the job. So it is a really great way of not only improving the brand, getting to know the name, but also cultivating and engaging with your talent pool.
So spot on. And as you were kind of going through that, and especially talking about the example where that veteran was at the hiring event and saw that organization that they were like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I heard some stuff. I'm not sure I'm just that into them. It made me think of some homework that I'm going to assign to you. So, yes, this will not be graded, but it's homework. I would love for you to go out there and research your company from a job seeker's perspective. What are they going to find about your organization? Are they going to find all of the great news stories that are out there? Or are they going to find the things that you're like, oh no, I thought we buried that better? So make sure that you go out there and know what your job seekers are going to find about you. That'll also help position you when they do come and they ask you that question during the interview phase about, well, I saw on said platform that you're doing X. You don't want to be in a position where you don't know what X is. You want to be able to explain it with authenticity because no organization is perfect. We all have warts, and more importantly, what you did to overcome those. So I think that's an important part. Get out there, research yourself. Don't Google yourself like as a human, because that's a whole nother story, Kathleen. That's a whole nother special broadcast that we'll have to do at another time.
Well, Rachel, I really think you bring up a really good point because there are all of those employment, I don't know what to call them, Glassdoor and reviews and
Mhm.
things like that. Some of them you have to take with a grain of salt,
Yep.
but I've always found interesting in online discussions, be it Slack, be it LinkedIn, be it whatever, you're always going to have one or two people who are going to pipe in. And if you're
Right.
not keeping an eye, I mean, I know a lot of people just like to post something on LinkedIn and walk away, hoping that applications are going to come in. But if you post something and you're not engaging with people and watching the people who might come up and say something, those give you really good opportunities to stand out, that you are a company to be known. You are a company willing to have that personal touch with the candidate and community rather than you're just going to be posting. So I had to add that.
No, I love that. I think it is so apropos, especially as we kind of continue talking about some of the different tactics to overcome not having your name in lights like maybe some of the other organizations. And one that came to mind as we were kind of going through and really framing up what this conversation would be was our friend DJ Brown. He had some tips that I thought were super helpful, and he really kind of summed up what one of the opportunities was at Data Haven. And that was, hey, it's getting people to to the table. Once they're at the table, their minds were blown about the benefits, about all of the greatness that existed within the organization, but was really the challenge about getting them to the table. So he had some great suggestions out there about getting that invite out so that you could have all of those candidates come to the table. And I think it's exactly what you were just mentioning, Kathleen. It's about leveraging social media. You might love it, you might hate it, but my friends, it's here and it ain't going nowhere. So it's about really embracing it, but also being aware of it and making sure that when those things are posted that you're responding appropriately, not out of personal feelings, but from that professional lens, and making sure that everyone is entitled to an opinion and a perception, and perception does dictate reality. So you have to go out there and be able to speak to what those person's concerns or their perception may have been. Take ownership and accountability that we're not perfect, but again, embrace social media. Don't be afraid of it. Just make sure you're prepared. There's such great training out there that you can take on how you can really utilize it and how you can make sure you're getting out there.
I know when social media first came out over a decade or so ago that everyone was like, "Oh, it's too much, I can't do it." And, it's free unless you decide to do, some massive application and massive scheduling thing. And all of us recruiters, I know we don't have a lot of time, but an hour or two is not going to make that big difference in your workflow, but it is going to make a big difference as far as getting your name out, getting known within the industry, and getting more candidate engagement.
And embracing the YouTube model, if you will. YouTube, you can go out there and figure out how to set your table, how to boil the perfect egg. Segue, there is no way to boil a perfect egg. Those suckers just never come out right. But back to what we're here to talk about. It's YouTube, the how to model out there. And so it's really giving people that, hey, here's what our hiring process is going to feel like. This is what it's going to look like. And kind of that step by step, just like we're giving you a sneak peek behind our scenes, the questions that we ask that you may not have heard before, same way that you want to give an applicant that understanding. This is what it's going to feel like. This is how you're going to be treated. This is what some of our friends that are currently working here, how they feel about the organization. So just make it as human as possible. And you were kind of mentioning this earlier, Kathleen. It's about having a human approach, that personal touch, not making it feel like, oh, got another email, but making it feel like I did it intentionally with you in mind. And again, having some authenticity behind it. Make sure when you're doing it that you truly mean it and it's not just a box that you're checking there.
One thing that we haven't talked about that I've seen a lot of people do, which is explaining the entire hiring process on your career site. And this is a very successful way. I've seen a lot of companies sort of break down that mystery of I've applied for a job. What are the next steps? And I think it is something that more companies should be doing, is making people understand, we're going to get your application, and then here are the next steps, and here is a way to reach out to our recruiting team. I know we have some other examples. Rachel, what are some of our other examples that our guests have showed us?
Absolutely. Well, I love this next one because I believe in living outside the box and super glad that my friend Shannon Morgan over at Ball Aerospace also likes to live outside the box and likes to be brave and likes to be courageous. And this is going to be a little bit self-promoting, Kathleen, so bear with me for a second here. But she had a great idea, like, I don't know, doing crazy things like being a guest on a podcast. You friends can also be a guest on our podcast. Make sure you check out our page and click, and you too, Kathleen, can meet new friends on our podcast. Sorry, I just had to do it. I thought it was such a great idea, and I just wanted all of our friends to get to meet so many friends out there. So
Right.
it's not too late, but no, it's being innovative and creative. And I do love the idea of doing things that maybe outside your comfort zone. That's when real growth happens, when you get outside of that comfort zone and put yourself out there. You're going to be on social media. You're going to be there, whether you like it or not. Harness it, embrace it, and take ownership of it so that you can get the right message out there. I also love Krista DeJohn at SOCI was also able to share that it's not about posting and praying. Those days are gone. right? So were the days of posting in the newspaper, trying to get folks that way. Can you even find a newspaper? I haven't seen one in a while, Kathleen. But it's going out there and being active in the process. Again, taking that ownership, that proactive step of going out there and sourcing those friends and getting them out there. You have to put your name in front of them because there's so much competition, especially when you think of the DC metro area. I mean, you can't throw a quarter out there without hitting one of your competitors. So it's important that you are doing something to differentiate yourself and doing it proactively. Don't wait for them to come to you. You go out to them. And I know this is a little silly, but it's something that I found that has worked just kind of throughout my career. And I know I'm going to say it. It's t-shirts. And I know that sounds really silly, but for recruiters and for employees in general, they love swag. We kind of talked about swag earlier, like it's good, you want it. But t-shirts, putting your company's name on a t-shirt and having an employee that's willing to wear your name of your company out in public. I mean, talk about word of mouth. That is some incredible publicity that you're getting out there. And it's that organic conversation. If I've got my company's name plastered across my back or my chest or my arm or, my forehead, wherever it may be, wherever I'm rocking it that day, and people say, hey, I've heard of that before, or hey, I'm not familiar with that organization. What a great way. So it's important that you get your name out there by utilizing your employees, making sure that they feel excited about it. Also, keeping your employees aware of things that are going out there. We talked about, Kathleen, you mentioned Glassdoor. Don't forget about your employee base. They can go out there and herald the message. They can leave reviews about why they love working for your organization. So give them a t-shirt, give them information, and let your employees really be the ambassadors of your company brand. And I'm telling you, money well spent.
So you bring up one of my favorite topics is t-shirts.
T-shirts?
Yes, t-shirts.
I
So
love them.
we had ClearedJobs.Net t-shirts for years. I remember we had, the summer tour, and it was fun to create. But it's
Mm.
also something, getting your name out, going to specific pockets of talent and sponsoring. So I'm a big lover of the B-Sides organization. There's over 1,000 of
Mhm.
them globally. And there's some on some very key markets: San Antonio, Augusta, Rocket City. Here in the DC area, there's about 3 or 4 of them. Those are highly cleared, highly talented cybersecurity IT professionals that they spend a lot of time there. And the organizations are always looking for sponsorships, and you get to be on these amazing t-shirts. So you want to get your name out in a very specific market. Check out your local security B-Sides and sponsor and get on their t-shirt. Another way that we created a way to get your name out and putting everyone sort of on the same level playing field is we started a program called the Best Recruiter Program over 10, 15 years ago. And it's basically when at our job fairs, job seekers are able to vote for the company that provided the best overall recruiting experience. Now, that is the
Ooh, that's
only
good.
qualifier that the voting is based on. So, big name companies, middle name companies, small name companies, you get to put your best foot forward out there. You get to engage with candidates, and then candidates vote, and then we tout all about you. And I can't tell you how many companies really like competing there because they say, yeah, it's about us. It's about our personal interaction. So I think that's great. So we've been talking today about getting your name out. It's a highly competitive field. There's not an unlimited budget that everybody has as far as advertising, and not everyone has an unlimited amount of time to do things. But some of the things that we've talked about, t-shirts is one. That's Rachel's favorite. We've also had DJ Brown over at Data Haven talking about social media and putting the entire hiring process on YouTube. We had Jess Matthias, talking about that personal touch in the overall hiring process, calling the candidate, giving the candidate feedback. I think that's great. Were there any other big points that you remembered, Rachel, that you wanted to give a special shout out to?
I think it's just that proactive. Gone are the days of sitting back and waiting. Now you've got to get out there. You take ownership. They're going to talk about you. Don't let them talk behind your back. Make it in front of your face and you take ownership of it. I think that was the thing that resonated the most. It doesn't matter if you have the biggest name out there, if you can share your name in a way that's different, share what makes you glitterly. I think that might be a new word, Kathleen. I think we might be onto
Yep.
something. If you want to be glitterly, then you make sure you go out there and share your story and what makes you different and special, and be glitterly.
Literally. Thank you for joining us today. We've been talking about some of the challenges that cleared recruiters have in the space. Share the ways that you've overcome these challenges, and we look forward to sharing with you more in our next episode.
See you then. Bye. Bye-bye.